Hello everyone, Danny here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I'll be doing a re-release of our review for Life is Strange, Forget Me Not. This is a new book from TitanComics. Now, the reason I'm doing a re-release, and whenever we do a re-release, it's because usually the book has a delay. So whenever there's a delay, we don't really find out. Whenever we do advanced reviews, we put those out on a Monday before the book is supposed to come out. And we don't really find out that there's a delay usually until Wednesday. Now, a lot of this, some stores, and the book was available digitally, yes, last week on the 13th, but shops, a lot of shops didn't really get Life is Strange Forget Me Not #1 until this week on the 20th of December. That's when I was able to get it too physically. Now, luckily, I had a review copy, but whenever we do a little something like this, I like to add a little bit of extra content, make it worth your while. So I wanted to show you the covers that I picked up. So I picked up the D Woo cover. I'm not familiar with the artist. I don't know their work very much, but it was a really fantastic cover. And as I've mentioned in the review, um, I really enjoyed this book. Now I also picked up the Zoe Thorgood cover, and I think if I hit the comic shop on the weekend, I'm gonna also try to pick up a Tula Lotte cover. Just a lot of really good artists working on this, a lot of really cool people working on these designs and this book. Overall, I'm fully on board with the Life is Strange. So please enjoy my review. Also, I'm gonna link in the description of the video a conversation I had with my buddy Brian and Mike from the I Read Comic Books podcast, where we also talk about this book a little bit more in depth. Brian is a big fan of the franchise, so he's able to give you a lot more insight into that. So please enjoy the video, and thanks for watching. Life is Strange, Forget Me Not from Titan Comics. This is a new book that is coming from the Life is Strange series of video games and franchise. Let's talk about the creative team before we get into this book real quick. This book is written by Zoe Thorgood with art by Claudia Leonardi. Covers, we have Zoe Thorgood. Also, we have colors by Andrea Izzo and a few variant covers that we'll see at the end of the video by Emma Vicelli, Tula Lotte, and Angela Wu. In this book, after the events of Life is Strange, True Colors, Alex and Steph tour across the United States in their band until they find another lost soul on the side of the road, Lily. The pair take the teenager under the wing to uncover the truth of what she's running from. But there's more to Lily than meets the eye as she silently struggles under the weight of heartache and memories from lives she hasn't lived to protect those around her from the truth of pain. An all too familiar story to Alex, but there is time to save Lily from a familiar, lonely fate. Um, so, before I get into the review of this specific comic, uh, I actually haven't played the games. I've only read a little bit of some of these comics that are ties into the game or like spin-offs. I kind of think of these comics as DLC content where you really are just kind of experiencing the story. So I'll say for this specific issue, it almost feels like when you jump into a new pool and you can't really tell how deep it is. So at first you're a little disoriented, but once you kind of get your bearings, the creative team behind the book does a really good job of helping you get back above water and enjoy the story. So I really enjoyed this first issue overall, even without all the prior knowledge of the franchise. I think there's a really interesting mystery and a story here. These characters are likable, and I think if you are a fan of Life is Strange, you'll see a few Easter eggs and things that maybe are familiar to you from the games or from previous comics, or even just from the latest series, True Colors. But if you're not, if you're coming into this fresh with new eyes, kind of like me, you'll still have an enjoyable story with interesting characters, likable characters, and a really fun kind of mystery as we move along. So let me pull up some of the preview art here. Now, I'm not too familiar with Leonardi as an artist, but I really enjoy the work. I think it's just very charming, and I really like the character designs. It's just really fun, and all that tied in with the lettering, where some of these with the big expressions, and like the really big bubbles here, especially here when she's yelling out of the outside of the bus. and then we run into the mystery. Right, this page of Lily is jarring. Like, it's just very cool. I love the aura. Like, you'll see throughout the book, these characters have a little bit of like a coloring aura around them, and that's kind of a part of the powers from one of our characters. I think as you get into the book, you'll realize that, and it's a really fun way to show this on a static medium like a comic book page. With the different emotions representing different colors, which is kind of what we see here. Of course, there's a lot of mystery around Lily, and I think what she may be running from, why she's a runaway. I will say all the characters are drawn very young, so it was hard for me to tell how old everyone kind of was. But I can tell like for the most part, the characters are overall young adults and teenagers. So um, really cool that they're kind of just touring. They do get to see other characters. I won't go too much into it, but they do get to see other characters that you may recognize from a different story or even from a different game, or maybe the same game, just characters within the world. So yeah, I think Thurgood does a really good job of welcoming in a new audience while rewarding the existing audience with some of the little tidbits that are around there, and setting up an interesting mystery that starts unfolding very slowly. I think the book is very well paced. So I quite enjoyed this first issue. I'm a big fan of Thurgood regardless. So like I definitely wanted to check this out. Very happy that we were able to look at this a little bit ahead of time. Now, as far as I know, this book is supposed to come out on December 13th, which is what we're doing the advanced review today. If it doesn't, just come back and check it out whenever you get to see it. But according to the website on previews, this should be out on December 13, 2023. So if you want to hear me talk more about this, check out I Read Comic Books this week on our new podcast episode. If you missed it on Twitch live, I get to talk about this book with Brian and Mike. Brian is a big fan of this series, so he was able to guide us in a little bit more through this conversation. But I wanted to put a review as well on this channel. But I'll link in the description to the other video as well if you want a more in-depth conversation, and also so you can check out the rest of the episode on I Read Comic Books when it comes out on Wednesday. So hello everyone, Dan here for the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I'm doing an advanced review for Animal Pound #1. This is a new book from BOOMstudios. I want to say maybe a couple of weeks ago, the ash can for this was released. I was able to read it. I made a little video about it, a quick short on the channel. So if you check that out, thank you very much. But here we have finally, the full review for issue #1. Now let's talk about the team before we get into this book. This book is written by Tom King with art by Peter Gross, colors by Tamara Van Villen, and letters by Clayton Cowles. Now, I will tell you this before we get into any of that, a little bit behind the scenes. It was kind of tough to get preview art for this. I couldn't find anything online, but I did pull some images that come from the trailer for this series. Boom put out a trailer on their YouTube channel. And as I was reading, I noticed that they use a lot of the art from issue #1. So I'll be able to talk to the art while talking about that. So, but what's going on with this book? Let's talk about it. When animals grow tired of being caged, killed, and sold off, it's only a matter of time before they've had enough. When an uprising puts a pound in control of the animals, they quickly find themselves as comrades, united against everything that walks on two legs. But with this newfound power comes a sudden challenge: how to best lay the groundwork for this new democracy as they write their first constitution. Discover an epic graphic storytelling event from celebrated New York Times bestselling author, Eisner Award-winning author, writer Tom King, and New York Times bestselling Eisner Award-nominated artist Peter Gross. King and Gross collaborate for the first time ever to bring this enduring Orwellian allegory to life for the 21st century. So, yeah, I mean, this is in many ways kind of a 21st century Animal Farm type of book. If you've read that, if you're familiar with that work, if you're not, it doesn't matter. I think the book, Tom King very clearly lays out a plan. And you know what I really like too about this book is that there are multiple levels that you can get from this. You can just be entertained by this story about these animals that are trapped in the pound, or you can even go beyond and look into the commentary and and just kind of try to figure out what is this book trying to say about currently in society, about the treatment of these animals, about how these animals have to work together and unite against the tyranny that's keeping them in the cage. There's definitely a lot for there's definitely a lot for us to examine in this book, and I just think that it's done in such a really accessible manner, right? Tom King and Peter Gross and the whole team really make this very accessible, whereas you're enjoying, of course, a piece of media, but then you're also getting a little bit more out of it. All that kind of wrapped up in this metaphor of these animals in the animal pound. And then, of course, Peter Gross's art is fantastic. We'll get into it in a minute. It is so detailed. It is heartbreaking sometimes. I didn't know that the animals could be so expressive. So let's take a look at some of the preview art here. We can see some of the characters. Now, not all the dogs have names that I am aware of in the first issue, but we do have Titan, who's this Rottweiler in the bottom of the page, who we follow along with. We also have multiple dogs that are kind of in the same kennel in the same side. We meet a lot of cats. We meet another dog named Lucky, who we'll see as well, and he's kind of the inspiration for everything to happen here. But I just really love the design of the animals. They look so they look weathered. Let me go back to the page here with all the dogs. You can see there's so much detail. Like one of the dogs is missing an ear. Some of these dogs have scars. Their fur's not being kept up with, right? And then just the expression that the cats kind of have. It is very, very interesting stuff. Very well done, very well presented, beautiful colors. You'll see it. Some of the images from the trailer were a little bit. It's not the true color that's shown on the book. I think some of these images may be a little bit brighter, but just because of the way the trailer is presented, of course, it's in a more cinematic fashion. So they use some transitions and effects. But Tamara Van Bellen, fantastic job with the coloring as well. And then, although you can't see much of the lettering on these images, it is really interesting to show how the dogs and the cats have a bit of a different speech pattern almost. I think there's a distinction there, whereas the cats seem to be more outgoing and talkative. Like the dogs communicate in shorter bursts. It's really interesting how they kind of really thought about all these little aspects of it. So that comes a lot with the lettering. So I quite enjoy this issue. So yeah, I can't wait to see what everybody else thinks about this. There's some really, really cool covers, and there's some heartbreaking covers too for this book. So anything with animals, like, man, if you have read, I think this is it's just kind of emotional. If you read We Three, it's very different, like thematically or tonally, but tonally is still kind of the same. I don't know if I hopefully that makes sense if you have read the book. But yeah, I'll be interested to see how this follows up. I don't know exactly how long. I think this is going to be a mini series from what I've seen. I don't know how much. I don't know how long the story could go. But especially after the events of the first issue. So yeah, I'll be interested to follow along with the story. I think this is a great book from Boom, and I'm very, very excited that we are finally able to get it out there. Because I've been wanting to talk about this for a little while now. So. Hello everyone, Dan here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I'll be doing a review for Kill Your Darlings number 4. This is the end of the first arc. But let's take a look at the creative team before we get into this book. This book is written by Ethan Parker and Griffin Sheridan, with art by Robert Quinn, letters and design by John J. Hill. I can't believe we are already at the end of the first arc. These first 4 issues have been some of the coolest things I've read in a long, long time. Um, and we are getting another review very quickly because of the printing issues and the delay. So the last issue came out on 12/6. Now we're here again with another review for the upcoming book this Wednesday. So in this issue, to save Elliot's life, Rose will have to journey into the darkest depths of the cave and once more come face to face with a great and terrible evil. Now, this issue not only does it does a lot of things a little bit differently than the stuff we've been seeing before, which I think it's very cool. I think it's really interesting how the creative team still kind of finds ways to present things in a new way for the book, right? Keep us guessing, some changing expectations. So yeah, there's definitely a little bit of a change of pace, if you will, as to how we begin the books. Now, if you have seen from the first three issues, we begin with flashbacks to a time that we don't really know much about yet. Multiple different time eras, multiple characters that maybe we have been given some clues, but up until this point, we don't really know the full context of how the story is being presented. But things are definitely coming to fruition. I think there'll be some really cool payoffs, specifically in this issue. So very interested in how that follows up in the story. I think another thing that this book does very well is just make you care about both Rose and Elliot and their friendship and all the things that they're going through. And of course, there's some really dark stuff happening. Like, this is probably when I was finished reading this issue, like I was kind of almost physically upset by everything that had been going on, but it's such an interesting story and it's so well done. Um, because we are getting to talk to or hear from this great and terrible evil, John J. Hill's work comes to the forefront as we get that the yellow lettering with the black background once again, which looks very cool. And then Bob Quinn again, just really using all the tools, especially the coloring, to really guide and run through the pace of the book. So let's bring in some of the preview art here. Now, because this is preview art from issue 4, there'll be a little bit of spoilers from any issues prior. So as we get in here, we can see, first of all, Elliot, as he's being controlled by this entity still, this great evil. And the way you can tell, of course, is because, like I mentioned, we have the speech bubbles that are once again with the black background and the yellow lettering. And of course, Rose wants to help. She follows along, and I just really love the transition between these pages. Now, I was reading this on the preview PDF, so I don't get to see the double pages, but once I put together the pages in the presentation, it makes a lot of sense how everything's kind of laid out. I love that, you have these really long, thin panels to show the movement, show the pacing, and then show how we pretty much run out of light in the middle of this tunnel. But then we kind of start coming in through the other end. And it's just a really, really cool technique to show this transition of both light and sound in a static medium. I think this is really well done by the team. And then we get into a little bit more of an action, a couple of action pages as Rose is finally confronted by Elliot, who is being controlled right now. So what is Rose to do? She doesn't want to hurt her friend. She wants to save her friend. Also, she's at this point a little bit defenseless because she doesn't really have a way to strike back. So we definitely play a lot with that idea. And there's some really cool stuff that happens later on where the team just kind of keeps all the expectations that you have about where this book is going. I feel like they are kind of we have a lot of twists and turns that kind of don't even I don't even know what to expect next, really. So very cool stuff. We probably get my favorite Ryan Stegman cover as well for the variant in this issue. So I am very, very excited to see how the rest of this book plays out. But this is a great place if you have been trying to catch up. Go ahead and catch up all the way to issues 1 through 4. And definitely you'll see exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to this story, as it just kind of keeps getting crazier and crazier. So Hello everyone, Dan here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I'll be doing a review slash preview overview of Shift #1. This is a new comic book, a one-shot from ImageComics. Let's take a look at the creative team here before we talk about what's going on in this one-shot. So this one-shot is written by Kyle Higgins with art by Daniel Diniculo, Francesco Mana, and Danilo Beirut, Geraldo Borges, Chris Evehues, and we also have colors by Walter Biamonte, Marcelo Costa, Mark Englert, Jean Wagers, and letters by Becca Carey and Diego Sanchez. Cover art by Igor Monti. And of course, this is all from the Radiant Black universe created by Kyle Higgins and Marcelo Costa. And then Shift created by Kyle Higgins and Daniel Diniculo. So, what is this book all about? This extra-length one-shot contains the first 4 8-page Shift stories originally released in the Image anthology books. So Shift had 4 different stories, but we're also getting a brand new 5-page story by Shift creators Kyle Higgins and Daniel Diniculo ahead of Shift's appearance in the Radiant Black The Catalyst War. So this character was introduced in the anthology. And you get to reread that if you haven't read it, because it's not all collected in one spot. This is what you want to do. This is where you want to be, especially if you're trying to get ready for the Catalyst War that is upcoming in the Radiant Black book and the universe. In this issue, Shift is tangled with Radiant Black and fought alongside the Dead Lucky. But who's the man in the suit, and how did he assemble his team of contractors? So Shift is very interesting because it's kind of a manufactured persona, right? So it's really different from the Radiant Black characters. I like that the more that Higgins and the team expand on this universe, the more that they find these interesting ways to kind of bring in new characters. Of course, they look really cool. We have just fantastic artists that have a very distinct style, very stylized, very much big, bright, bombastic colors and sequences. You'll see some in a minute. But yeah, this is really cool. Now, I will say this issue, because we are being introduced to a lot of this stuff, there's a lot of conversations, there's a lot of narrative, there's a lot of people talking. You'll see a lot of speech bubbles here as we try to get a little bit of exposition. But then once that's all kind of out of the way, I feel like the book's pacing really picks up into our first encounter, maybe with Shift and Radiant Black. So let's take a look at some of those preview pages now. Now, as I mentioned, some of this stuff has already been out, available to read, but here's your either way to refresh yourself on the story, or maybe visit it for the first time in a collected edition. So yeah, very cool stuff. And as I mentioned here, you can see there's a lot of conversation, there's a lot of talking, there's a lot of things, but you get to learn a lot about Shift as well here. And then I picked a few more really interesting pages. Here we see Radiant Black. We see the battery charging up. I love that kind of ticking clock for the pacing as things are starting to heat up. And then I love the pages here with the glitch effects. I think that looks super cool, especially if you think about Shift and his dynamic and his mechanics and how the Shift suit and the Shift technology works. I think it just makes a lot of sense to have those computer glitches as part of the art. So yeah, this one's a fun one. This one's really cool. If you're interested in the Radiant Black universe, Shift is another way for you to kind of come in and then go into this Catalyst War. The books are they're very accessible, and the series is still young enough where, within 4 volumes, I think, maybe 5, you can get caught up with the speed, and then you can expand on the universe as much as you want. There's a lot of peripheral characters that have their own series that are connected to Radiant Black in tangential ways. So very cool. Like, it's really cool. I'm really enjoying what Kyle Higgins and the team is doing here. So hello everyone, Dan here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I'll be doing a review for the Deviant #2. This is a new book from ImageComics. Let's take a look at the creative team before we get into this book. This book is written by James Tynion IV with art by Joshua Hickson and letters by Hassan Otsman and El How. Really, really cool. Oh, we have design by Tyler Boss too, and also edited by Steve Fox. So the amount of talent working on this book is incredible. So in this issue, the deviant killer apprehended half a century ago. So who's behind the grisly slaying of a young man in a Chicago department store? And why does Michael see so much of himself in the men locked behind the bars of the original murders? James Tynion IV and Joshua Hickson cut deeper into the Christmas horror tale just in time for the holidays. Um, Man, I really have been enjoying this book. Like, I forget how much I dig it until I go back and read the next one. Now, granted, there's only been 2 issues, but I've been into kind of a crime stories type of kick, like Ed Brubaker type of stuff. I've been watching Fargo, like stuff like that, and this just really fits in a really cool Venn diagram of like it's a crime story, but it's also like related to kind of like comic books because our main protagonist Michael is a comic book artist. It's a mystery, but it's also kind of like a character study. We have the relationship with Michael and his partner Derek, I believe. There's also a lot of. I feel like the book very much is hinting at like I think we know who the killer is, but I feel like there's gonna be a twist to that. I don't wanna get too ahead of myself. Now this is only gonna be a 4 issue series, so we're after this we're already halfway through. But I think also really like how James Tynion very subtly and very efficiently brings you the reason why Michael is looking for this story, right? Why does he believe that he needs to do this comic book to reflect this true crime? Now, obviously, true crime is a very popular genre, and I think it's just an excellent way to frame this story that is really also about Michael's kind of self-discovery and trying to figure out like why everyone blamed this person and what if they're not. I mean, the original Deviant claims to be innocent, and now with the return of some of these crimes, very interestingly, raises a lot of questions. I think also there's a scene here with Michael interviewing someone, and it feels like they're very welcoming at first, but as they find out more about Michael's personal life, they begin to close off, and it's just a very subtle like things are start happening where it never really evolves into a conflict, but it just makes you very uncomfortable reading. And I think Tinian and Hickson just really bring that to the forefront of the story, which is fantastic. So let's take a look at some of the preview art here. Joshua Hickson is magnificent, whether it's more of these like quieter moments where Michael and Derek are kind of hanging out, talking about all their problems, and also when it comes to moving over to this interview. This is the person that I was talking about that Michael has an encounter, and they seem very welcoming at first, but as they begin to realize that Michael has a partner and what he's doing, and like they begin questioning his motives. But it's all very subtle. It's all very kind of uh, non-confrontational, but it's still, like I said, made you very uncomfortable. I like the different places that we're traveling around. I feel like that's important to keep track of if you really want to get to the root of the mystery. And then, of course, something that I don't have, well, I don't want to show preview images for because it's a spoiler, but this book can also get very gruesome and like it is about a serial killer. So keep that in mind. Um, I would definitely advise against if you're not somebody that's into kind of like gore. Joshua Hickson, it's unfortunately he's very good at the portraying that in like in a really harsh manner. So, but it really makes the book really flow very well. It really gives you those shocking moments that I think you're expecting. So yeah, perfect stuff. It's a great for if you're somebody that likes like a holiday related something that's not like up and feel good, but you still want it to be set in the holidays, or you want it to be like a holiday book. This is perfect for that. I think when this is collected, it's gonna be an amazing read. But so far, issue to issue, it's been really fun. So I'll probably keep doing reviews for this as we have time in the channel. So Hello, everyone. Dan here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I'll be doing a review of Saint Seiya Knights of the Zodiac Time Odyssey number 3. This is a new book from ABLAZEcomics. Let's take a look at the creative team before we get into this book. Of course, this is a story by Masami Kurumada, Jerome Alque, and Arnaud Dolan, with art by Jerome Alque, letters by Saida Timofonte. This book just continues to be amazing. As you can see here, we're gonna focus on Iki, the Phoenix Knight. So in this issue, having the odds against you your entire life would break some people, but it has only made Iki stronger, making him far more difficult to defeat than Kronos ever considered. But just because things don't seem to be going Kronos' way, doesn't mean that humanity is safe from the gods' plans. So yeah, overall the story, Kronos, he wants to join the pantheon of the gods, and to do that, he wants to stop Iki from becoming Hades, as he has kind of foreseen. Um, I really love that this book. I don't know if it's doing a retcon or if it's doing just an expansion of some of the lore that's already out there. I don't really. I know Iki's backstory from when he got to Death Island. I think it's called. I believe it's called Death Island. Um, but after that, the pat, I like even anything prior to that. I don't think, at least I've ever experienced. But this book does a really good job of either expanding that lore or maybe retconning some things. You get to see a little bit about Iki's original teacher and how he became Deathmax. No, Deathmax is the Gemini Knight, but how he became that monster that wears the mask, and also everything that happened on Iki's training with Esmeralda and everything like that. Why his teacher only trained them to be a hateful knight. Uh, as always, the art is beautiful. The colors are vibrant. I just really like it. There's definitely a lot of dialogue and narration and exposition, because I feel like that's kind of homaging the original manga and the anime. They definitely had a lot of things that had to be a little bit of like, they just had to be explained, and they had to do some exposition. But it never gets in the way of the art. I don't feel that way. So let's go take a look at some of the preview art. And like I said, really cool bright colors. I love the aesthetic. Uh, the characters all look pretty much up to what the manga and the anime really felt like. Like, some of the characters are very long, really long limbs. I think that was one of the characteristics. So I love that the artist managed to recapture that, even though they're still kind of bringing in their own style a little bit. This book definitely feels a little bit a different style. Of course, the original manga was in black and white, so adding the colors really just gives you a whole nother layer. And just look how much story we're getting in between all this stuff. Um, so yeah, we'll definitely, it's definitely something I'm really enjoying. And as I mentioned, you get to see a lot of fight. You get to see a cool new armor for Iki, the Phoenix Knight. Very cool stuff. So really interesting stuff. Now, another thing that I'm really enjoying about this book is that the back matter. As I mentioned, we have character designs, we have a little bit of explanation. This one even has a little bit of a short story about Iki and his life, and it's just really cool. So here, let me show you a little bit of that. I just love all the details of the design of the armor and everything that you can see there. So yeah, the story continues to be amazing. I think we have a really fun twist on this issue. It's really cool to explore the powers of these hours that work for Kronos and how they feel. So really fun stuff. So hello, everyone. Dan here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I'll be doing a review for Godzilla Rivals Jaguar versus Megalon #1. But let's take a look at the creative team before we get into this book. This book is written by Nola Pfau, with art by Megan Huang, and letters and design by Nathan Widdick. So I will say I really like these Godzilla Rivals. This one, I'm not very familiar with the characters, um, especially Jet Jaguar. I don't really know much about Jet Jaguar and like the design or the armor or what it's supposed to be. I will tell you this as well. This book does have a content warning for mentions of suicide, so keep that in mind as you go into it. The book has a very clear warning as well. But I feel like it's good to have mentioned that. So in this issue, Jen Anka is not excited to start her new fast-paced fast food career at Manila Burger, but she'd much prefer a mundane day to the sudden return of Megalon. The monster brings destruction, trapping Jen in a forgotten lab deep beneath the restaurant with only a half-built form of Jet Jaguar. To help her get out, she must repair the robotic defender to save herself and the city, but first she needs to escape the rubble, trapping her in this tense adventure. And I think this book really does everything pretty well, very efficient. It's just I don't know, something didn't really fully hook me or connect. I think a part of it is that I don't know, like I'm not familiar with these characters. When I open a Godzilla Rivals book, I expect a giant monster, but definitely also maybe a mention at least of Godzilla. Obviously, this book was not that. So, but let's take a look at some of the preview art. I think Megan Huang has a really great. I really like when it comes to the conversation and all that, and the sudden action here. Really, really good stuff. I love the when Megalon shows up. But then from there, we do spend a little bit of time in this basement trying to put the Jet Jaguar together, having Jen try to escape. So the pacing felt a little off to me, which was probably another issue that didn't fully help me connect with this book. But overall, I think if you're a fan of these characters, you're gonna have a good time with this. Um, but if you don't, you may need a little bit more explanation of like who they are, how Jen can put this Jet Jaguar armor together, and then how it works. It wasn't super clear to me. But other than that, I think this is a fine book for fans of this specific genre, and then fans of these specific characters. So if you have read this, let me know what you thought about it. If you have more information on some of these characters, let me know down in the comments. As always, thank you for watching, everyone. Remember to share, like, subscribe, hit the bell so you know when we go live. That is most Saturdays, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Stay tuned. We have more comic reviews, trailer reactions, TV recaps, all that fun stuff here on the channel. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye-bye.